Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, a podcast for senior living leaders who are looking to stay ahead of the curve in the industry. On this show, we feature leaders and innovators in senior living who are pushing the boundaries and creating new, effective services and solutions. And now, let's settle in as host Jennifer Drago connects us with today's guests.
Welcome to Senior Living Visionaries, where we showcase the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of senior living. I'm your host, Jennifer Drago, strategy consultant and CEO of Peak to Profit. And today my guest is Michele Holleran, Dr. Michele Holleran, and talk about an innovator in senior living who's truly been shaping our industry for years now. And I'm so excited. I've been so excited to meet you, Michele, and then also now to have you on the podcast. I'm going to introduce Michele real quick. Michele is founder and CEO of two firms, Holleran Consulting, which is a full-service research firm offering resident and employee engagement and satisfaction studies, as well as various other types of surveys. And that organization, you can tell us the history of it in just a second, but I know that's a long-standing organization that many will recognize the name of. And then you also have your own consulting practice that specializes in strategic planning, leadership development, and executive coaching. So we do some of the same types of services, and that's why I'm always excited to talk to like-minded individuals and see what you're seeing out there in the industry today. Michele holds a PhD in Organization and Management from Capella University and an MBA from the Pennsylvania State University. Her dissertation topic was on culture change and leadership in aging services. She's facilitated many board retreats and strategic planning processes for aging service organizations across the U.S., and she's a frequent columnist for McKnight's magazine on the topics of leadership, workforce retention, and resident engagement. Michele is currently the chair of the Center for Innovation, a not-for-profit which oversees the work of the Greenhouse Project and the Pioneer Network. She was also the first chairperson and co-facilitator of the Larry Minnick's Leading Age Leadership Academy, a year-long leadership development program for emerging leaders in senior living. She conceptualized and led a design team to formulate an international forum of senior living leaders and technology experts called the Innovators Summit, which was held in 2011 in Colorado Springs. Following this forum, she wrote Innovation in Senior Living for Leading Age. She has served on the board of Eaton Senior Services, an affordable housing community based in Lakewood, Colorado. And Michele created the Senior Living Women's Leadership Retreat, which is now in its 7th year. So welcome, Michele. I'm so glad to have you here.
So glad to be here, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
You bet. And so because many will know your name and know about Holleran Consulting, why don't you just remind us what Holleran continues to do and then what you're transitioning to in this new year in 2024 in terms of your consulting.
Great. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, Holleran Consulting has been around a long time, 32 years this year. And I'm really proud of what this organization has done. We have a great team and have a very large database, primarily of not-for-profit life plan communities. And what we've done is measure resident and employee satisfaction and engagement. And we feel like engagement is really important as well because that's the higher rungs of Maslow's hierarchy, fulfilling those types of needs regarding belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization, fulfillment of purpose, things of that nature, having a voice. And so our tools measure that. And we've been very successful and have so many clients around the country that are using that tool today and making some really wonderful inroads in terms of resident engagement and employee engagement. Mm-hmm. So that's what Holleran has done. Recently, with the team, we've developed some great new tools around DEI measurement, around well-being for employees. Mm-hmm. We have something called the Resident Experience Survey now, and we have a culture survey that helps us identify 3 different things regarding culture. And so Holleran has been innovating and exploring new products that meet the needs of our clients for the last several years. Now I'm transitioning, starting in May, to an organization that I've led for probably 20 years now, but I haven't talked about it a whole lot. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes and haven't really promoted it very well, I guess. It's DeArment Consulting, which is an organizational development consultancy. And that really focuses on things like strategy, strategic planning, leadership development, executive coaching, and things of that nature. So that'll be my focus going forward in May. And Holleran will be led by Chris Wally and Caitlin McCulley, who are really fantastic folks. And I feel like I'm leaving the organization in great hands with those folks at the helm.
Yeah, I agree. And I had the opportunity to interview Chris Wally a couple episodes back. We'll link it in the show notes so that if anybody wants to learn more about Holleran and some of the trends that you all are seeing in senior living, I think that was a really great episode that kind of opened our eyes after COVID, right? We're still, I know lots of people say that the industry has recovered or is in the later stages of recovery. I still see a lot of organizations that are floundering a bit, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in what we can learn from each other, which is one of the reasons I really want to talk to you today.
Thanks.
So thank you for that summary. I really appreciate that. And, you know, you and I are both in the strategy world. We've both been doing this for many years. And, you know, speaking of coming out of COVID and the challenges that we've had in recent years, the inflationary pressures, the recruitment and retention issues of staffing, lots of things going on, occupancy challenges, of course. You know, it's so important, I think, that an organization has a clear strategy, a clear business strategy in order to, so that the leaders can lead it on the right path to get to where they want to go. And in a recent interview that I did with Dana Walschlager from Plant Moran, partner at Plant Moran, that's episode 108, we talked about, you know, how she's engaged to do development projects in particular. So talking about either right-sizing campuses or repositioning or developing new parts of campuses. And she was struck by how many organizations that she begins working with that don't have a current strategic plan in place. And so then she has to back up and say, wait, the first thing we have to do is really figure out what your strategy is so then we can plan this development to integrate with that strategy. And I, too, see lots of organizations that maybe haven't updated their strategic plan in a while. So tell me your thoughts and concerns about the current state of senior living and specifically as it relates to strategy. And then give us your thoughts on what do you see as best practices when it relates to strategic planning overall.
Sure. Well, there's no doubt that strategic planning has dropped off the radar of a lot of organizations who were just trying to keep pace with, you know, the day-to-day. And I think part of it, too, is the fatigue level of the leadership and the fact that many CEOs are almost gun-shy about asking their folks to do strategic planning. And that's because it is a time-consuming thing. Mm-hmm. But the way I like to look at it, Jennifer, and not everyone will look at it this way, but I do, I think it's more about today's strategic thinking and to do this on an ongoing basis as opposed to this big daunting task of creating a strategic plan. Now, often it does result in that type of a plan, but if you do your strategic thinking and you kind of look at it as an evolving process where, you know, you're involving many stakeholders, and that's my first recommendation is that you don't limit it just to the executive team or even just the executive team and the board, but you get as many stakeholders involved as possible on the front end. And that also includes residents who are very much concerned about their communities these days, how financially solvent they are. They're concerned about having a voice. You know, the type of folks who are starting to come into our organizations these days and live on our campuses are pretty sophisticated, and they feel that they have a lot to offer as well. In fact, I know of one campus, Kendall at Oberlin, who actually had a resident lead their strategic planning process.
Oh, nice.
Which might sound pretty radical, but this individual happened to have a lot of experience being a former college administrator with strategic plans. And so the CEO at that point, Barbara Thomas, said, hey, why don't you partner with us and really show us how it's done? And so inviting residents into the conversation, I think, is more important than ever. So I would say that that's, the first best practice that I would suggest, that you involve a lot of different stakeholders, because everyone has a different perspective, and hearing all those voices is really important. The second thing I would say, and this goes along with my first comment about it being a strategic thought process that's ongoing, involve your board in generative discussions on a regular basis. In fact, I've seen a statistic lately that says that 70% of the board meetings should be talking about generative conversation, strategic conversation. And certainly a board has a fiduciary responsibility to oversee budgets and to make sure that the fiscal responsibility is there, that the fundraising is getting done, et cetera, et cetera. But so many of our meetings could be refocused and re-energized by having people's fresh ideas come to the fore, as opposed to rehashing information that could have been sent out in advance, sitting there and listening to talking heads. That sort of thing is not as engaging. And I do believe that as we plan for the future, it's important to continuously educate each other about what's going on in the field, and to take a breath and really have time for those generative, more expansive discussions at the board level. So I'd say that's another best practice. Something else that I think is important, a lot of plans tend to be overly complex and detailed, and I think that to start with, simple is better. In other words, I would suggest that you adopt no more than 5 key strategies or initiatives so that you can focus on those. And to importantly ask the question, what would the measurable outcome be that would show us we've been successful with this initiative? And then have people who are on your team very involved in the planning around those 5 initiatives, and for them to come up with the action plans and the timetables. If you outsource this completely to a consultant and you don't really involve your frontline people, they're not going to buy in too well.
True.
So I think that having a regular conversation about strategy with your key leadership team is important as well, Jennifer. I also like using a traffic light to check on the plan on a regular basis. Green means full speed ahead, everything's on track with timetables and systems and things that support that strategic initiative. A yellow would mean we're running into some roadblocks, barriers that we need to discuss proactively and transparently. And then the red tells us we're just hitting, a brick wall, and maybe we need to readjust. And there's no shame in that. It's very important, I think, for the leadership team to monthly review the strategic plan. And I think at least on a quarterly basis, the board should be doing so as well.
Yeah.
So
I really like those. I like all of your recommendations, and I'm just going to hit on the last 2 in particular, because you said keep it simple, only be working on 3 to 5. I think you said no more than 5 key strategies or initiatives. I think that's really key, especially in today's environment, because we know when we're operating a senior living community or multiple, the fires are going to come every day.
Right.
And so we need to, in our time when we're not fighting some of those operational fires, we need to be able to really focus on key strategies. I like that you said know what your measurements are. So that's another thing that I see also in senior living is that we'll have a goal, but it's not necessarily measurable or time bound or, all the things that we like to see in goals. And then the dashboard or the traffic light diagram, having that easy to see way to measure where are we at any given time at a glance and have that visibility on a regular basis in front of your leadership team, in front of your board. I think that's really important. And I agree with everything that you said as well. So thank you for those.
Add just a few more if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
One, don't be tempted to do this alone. One of the things that is really striking me these days is how valuable partnerships are with other providers. And a lot of the most successful providers are doing it together. If they're in the same geographic community, they might want to collaborate on something like a home health initiative, what we used to call the adult day scene, PACE programs. There's all kind of ways that people can really partnership with other providers, other community entities. And really, I think partnerships are something that we need to pay a lot more attention to. The other thing is, I think that we need to educate each other. And I would say that bringing in outside experts, industry partners who have expertise, these folks are really willing to share their knowledge. And if you can tap into their expertise, there's so many new initiatives out there right now, like longevity, technology, and we need to be educated about these things. We need to understand. Blue zones are another great example. So to educate your board and your leadership team on an ongoing basis, not just when it's time to do the strategic plan. That'll get the motors running in terms of what's our next strategic plan.
Right.
And I think to add new strategies as you feel it's appropriate and opportunistically makes a great deal of sense as well.
Sure. And that education goes hand in hand with the generative thinking, right? So the more we're educating and learning about what's going on in other, and it can even be in, shoulder industries or adjacent industries, but the more we're learning, we're going to see those opportunities and have a chance to have those generative discussions.
Right. So partnerships of any kind are always good. And I do believe that we can learn a lot from a partner.
Yeah, I love it. And it's definitely a key thing that's happening in senior living right now. It's, I think, gratifying to see that organizations are really banding together and, trying to adopt a synergistic approach versus, trying to do everything themselves because we have enough to do. So I love that idea. Okay, did we get all of your recommendations in? Because I don't want to cut you off.
Well, I'm sure more will pop up.
Okay, that's fair. So we talked about this a little bit, and I wonder if there's anything else that you want to add here. But, we hear senior living providers, sometimes the leaders, sometimes the board members saying, we want to be innovative. We want to know that we're doing the best that we can for our residents. And that in part relies on governance, as we've already referenced, and things that our boards can be doing differently to kind of evoke that innovative discussion, and then as well as leadership. Did we cover that well, or do you have anything else you'd like to add there?
Well, innovation is a favorite topic of mine, so I can probably go on too long about it. I did want to mention there's two books that I love. You're probably familiar with these. And you can see how dog-eared I'm on my notes.
That's great.
But this is Roger Martin's work, The Opposable Mind. And he really talks about integrative thinking. And integrative thinking it's not either or, sometimes it's and. We can talk about mashups or taking one concept that looks like it's maybe not in sync with another concept and somehow create something new. I think it's also important to talk about incremental innovation as well as like the eureka type of innovation. Um, we do need more innovation at all levels, but I think incremental innovation is also important. And that can come from your frontline workers. And a byproduct of getting them involved at that level and empowering them to come up with new ideas is that they become more engaged. And we know that engaged workers are 5 times less likely to leave the organization. So there's a really great, I think, synergy between innovation and retention that a lot of people don't think about. I think that there's another book that I'm reading as a result of a recommendation by one of my clients, Westminster Communities. You probably know Terry Rogers. He's such a bright light. And Terry has his team reading a book called Dual Transformation. And that is the idea that you've got to strengthen the core business, which I think a lot of organizations do pretty well. They're investing in their campuses. They're coming up with wellness products. They are talking more about an individualized approach to residents and engaging them. Some are employing life coaches and really having the residents direct a lot of the work of the organization. So that's all the core business, and that's really important to do. But there is this notion that while you're doing that and you're making the core the best it can be, and you are innovating, there's also a need to do a whole different focus, which would be considering a disruptive model that might actually cannibalize in the future, but it would be best for you to do it as opposed to someone else coming in and doing it. I know of some organizations, for instance, that have home care entities, and they've told me that in years past, people from the life plan side have resented the home care group because they feel like there's maybe a conflict, especially if it's a home care that is more concierge level, allowing people to stay in their homes, buying into a membership fee, for instance, that type of thing. But what those organizations are really doing is hedging their bets. And they realize that the life plan community is not going to be for everyone.
100%.
So it's been a very smart strategy for those organizations like Kendall who have taken that approach.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and I'll let you take a drink while I just respond to that, because I do a lot of work in the continuing care at home programs, which, many life plan communities, to your point, have resisted even thinking about because of that fear of competition with their brick and mortar. But what you said is so true, which is we know our consumer segment doesn't always want to move into our campus, or at least maybe they don't want to move in yet. So how can we help them make the best decision for them today and then bring them into the community when and if they're ready? It's a way for us to serve many more, I think, and also to better serve the middle market, which we know is an underserved part of our senior community.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I think the middle market is a huge opportunity. Home health is another huge opportunity. Navigator services to folks in the greater community is a real great service. People have a hard time making money on that, but there are ways to do it. And so I really think that senior living operators today need to step back and what we call get on the balcony and look at all the opportunities that are truly out there and to take advantage of those. One of my favorite ideas is to do something, Jennifer, called a future search.
Okay.
A fellow named Marvin Weisbord from the University of Pennsylvania came up with this idea years ago, and I was trained in it. I don't want to say how many years ago that happened, but it's a really great tool. It allows getting all the voices in the room. And that would include, vendors, industry partners, other providers, residents, frontline employees, supervisors, executive leaders, politicians, anybody who you think should come to the party and have their view represented. And to do like a half or a full day confab, so to speak, just so that people can put all kinds of ideas on the wall. And that's a wonderful way to innovate. And a lot of people won't go that step because they feel like, well, if I don't like the idea, I'll hurt someone's feelings. But not if you set the expectations up. And sometimes those ideas that are hatched in those kind of open forums where everyone has the freedom and the flexibility to kind of go off onto a tangent or to wonder about something that may not necessarily be a mainstream idea, that's where the best ideas come from. And so I like the idea of doing a future search model once or twice a year just to see what you can throw up against the wall and what might stick eventually. Um, I also think that we need to do a better job in our field, and we have started to do this through the leadership academies, both Larry Minnick's National Academy as well as the state affiliate academies, many of whom I've helped develop their leadership programs. Innovation is a big part of that education. We're, as a field, a fairly risk-averse field. We're the second most regulated field next to nuclear power. And so the types of folks that are attracted to this field are caregivers, largely. And so we have to learn innovation skills, which can be taught. And, I have an article that I love. It's from the Harvard Business Review called The Innovator DNA Skills.
Okay.
And there are 5 of them. And, teaching those 5, I think, are enormously important in our leadership education today. And you can do this in your orientation. You can work this into leadership development curricula. And I think that that's an important thing too, because these skills can be taught. And there are a couple best practices with innovation too. Supervisors who ask good, open-ended, what I call softball questions, are really stimulating people's thought process when they ask those kind of questions, and they're inviting people to be creative. There's something I use as a technique, which you're obviously very familiar with, I'm sure, called the 6 thinking hats, where you can get people in a room and teach them the 6 modes of thinking and invite them to share their ideas around a concept that maybe is more of an adaptive challenge and not a technical challenge. So I do think that that has a lot to do with innovation.
Yeah.
Teaching people those skills.
I love that you brought that up, that one, innovation skills can be taught, and that really it's, at the end of the day, it can be part of everybody's job. And lots of people really enjoy this, and it can be a way to engage all levels, right? Our employees, our residents. Just, one final question as it relates to innovation, because we started out talking about the strategic plan or strategic thinking, and then the fact that many organizations want to be more innovative. And when you kind of take that on as its own strategy or its own initiative, it can be quite overwhelming, right? The ideas start flying at you, whoever that is responsible for kind of managing that process in the organization, because there's lots of new technologies out there that is also seen as innovation. There's lots of great ideas that will come at you from the front lines, from the residents. And so do you feel like it's really important for an organization to have kind of an intentional innovation process that says, or procedure or framework or something that says, here's how we're going to manage all these ideas and decide which ones, are actually we're going to pilot or implement?
Right. The answer to that is yes. I think it should have some sort of an organization around it, some sort of a system
Mm-hmm.
put in place. Some people are now calling themselves chief strategy officers, and so that function would be part of their
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. And, chief growth officers often get involved in that as well. I do think that to have a roadmap of how to innovate is important. Years ago, I had the privilege of visiting the 3M organization
Mm-hmm.
in Minneapolis. And they have a really great process. And they also have the discipline to say, right now we don't have the bandwidth or the capacity or the resources to put behind this innovation.
Mm-hmm.
We think it's a fantastic idea. So they put it on the shelf and revisit it every so often,
Mm-hmm.
every several months, every half year, or whatever, to see whether or not that idea can gain some traction
Yeah.
with others on the team. And so I think having systems like that makes a good deal of sense. But I think also having the discipline of this future search idea of making sure that your board in particular has a chance for the generative conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I do think that, we need to rehaul some of our governance practices as well, and
Perfect.
that will serve us in our innovation.
Nice. That segues nicely into my next question. So, you and I both do a lot of board development work, and in our pre-call, we talked about kind of the state of senior living boards and some of the best practices that are coming forward and that we're moving into. We already mentioned one, which is generative discussion. But what other guidance would you offer to senior living providers, executives, and even board members who might be listening to this?
Okay. Well, I might not be too popular with the board members when they hear this, but I think we need some term limits.
Okay.
I definitely think that that's something that we need. I encounter board members who have been with the organization for 20 years. And I think we need fresh blood. And that's not to say that they haven't really delivered on contributing great ideas in the past. But if you don't have turnover, you become stale. And so I think it's important to have term limits. The other thing is the composition of the boards needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, younger people, often are more in touch with technologies, and, they may not have as much time and money as some of the more seasoned board members do, but they have other things to contribute. And so, I think altering some of the expectations about board members might be helpful to us as a field.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the one place, and I'll just say this, because it's my perspective, it's the one place where ageism is not up in place,
Mm-hmm.
because most of our boards really skew older.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great because you're talking to the target audience sometimes. But the board members, I think, also can tend to, just kind of ride on their laurels sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be bringing fresh ideas to the table. I also think we have gotten stuck in what I'll call, certain types of positions. Most boards have a banker,
Mm-hmm.
a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
a pastor. That's not to say they shouldn't. It's just to say that why don't we bring in some tech people,
Mm-hmm.
Consumer goods people, and others. And I'm even going to go so far to say maybe we should be paying these folks
Mm-hmm.
to participate on our boards. And the other thing is we shouldn't tolerate people who don't show up.
Agree. Yeah.
I've been on boards where we've had a hard time getting a quorum sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to make sure that the expectations are very clear at the beginning with board members. Excuse me. You're always going to have people who have last minute conflicts,
Right.
but I do think it's important to show up.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, some of the things you've already spoken of, generative discussion, educating, really having an innovation initiative, those kinds of things are going to engage people more, so they'll be more likely to show up. And then you're right, we need active, participating board members, more diverse boards, as you mentioned, of all ages, all different skill sets. And I'll just mention a resource here that I really like, and it's from Board Source. It's a board composition matrix, and it's a great way to kind of take inventory of your current board members and their skills, and even their interpersonal strengths, and then to see where you're missing things that when you're going out and recruiting new board members, you can be looking for those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Board Source is a great idea, Jennifer, and they also recommend that every 2 years at least a board does a self-evaluation. Now, I have not seen those be real successful. It seems to me like those should be done by an outside, unbiased entity who would come in and actually do the evaluation. And so I would make that recommendation as well. And I think another thing I would say about governance is many times there are standing committees of a board. I don't like that. I think that doing ad hoc committee work is more engaging and fresh, as opposed to having, a regular meeting of the finance committee or something like that. Certainly, the fiduciary responsibility is there, and you have to do things annually like budgets and things of that nature. But it just does seem like some of the board standing committees, like strategic planning, a lot of times they don't produce anything. And if you have something that's very specific, like you want the board to evaluate a new AI concept and how it might be used to better residents' lives, that would be a cool thing for an ad hoc committee to take up and take on. If you need to evaluate your CEO, that would be something that you could do more on an ad hoc basis as opposed to a standing committee. Again, I know my ideas are not necessarily going to be popular because we've done things a certain way for a long time, but I'm just thinking we need to be very respectful of people's time so that we're more oriented toward quality as opposed to quantity.
Yeah.
And I have seen a lot of boards go to quarterly meetings and, really pack a punch at those meetings.
Yeah.
So that it's less daunting for people to, show up because of conflicts and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I see that as well. One other quick thing about boards, and I'm curious on, you and I spoke a little bit about the fact that, and you mentioned it even today, that our industry as a whole tends to be risk adverse. Our boards tend to be risk adverse. The other thing that really is necessary at board meetings at this time in our maturity of with all the challenges and opportunities that we have is we need to have more discipline, and we need to require discipline, which would be the strategic plan review and the dashboards and making comment and taking action on those and making hard decisions sometimes. I mean, sometimes in our work, the nonprofit mission comes first, but we all know no margin, no mission. So what would you say about governance and what guidance you offer to boards around making hard decisions, being more disciplined, and getting out of that risk adversity thought mindset?
Well, certainly bringing experts in to do board education, I think, is helpful, and to facilitate a conversation right there when the expertise is in the room. And I think, that's certainly one way to deal with that. And, you don't always have to have these conversations at board meetings. You can create an ad hoc committee to study something and to bring a recommendation, for instance, based on some research that they've done. And so I think, the board listening to that committee and how they got to their conclusions is another way to make some hard decisions. And certainly the CEO and the executive team are going to have some thoughts. And so if they need to bring something to the board, I would say bring it sooner rather than later, not when it's an emergency situation, but, just being really transparent that, the executive team is seeing something that's cause for concern that will require a decision somewhere down the line, whether it be, oh gosh, we're losing market share because of our competition. We need to make you aware of this so that you can participate in some ideas with us. Or we are losing money left and right on our skilled nursing. What can we do to, salvage this so that we don't lose our shirt? Whatever it is, I think bring it up sooner rather than later whenever you see the beginning of a red flag, as opposed to,
Waiting.
An urgent, kind of situation where the board, doesn't feel like they had ample time to really think.
Yeah. I just want to underscore that, right? I see that so much in our industry, you probably too, where boards and leadership wait too long to kind of put up the flag and say, hey, we have a problem here. Let's not wait as long. Let's start having these discussions sooner so that we can take action.
Yeah.
And maybe that
And
comes...
CEOs have to look at those board members as partners.
Agree.
And for a number of years, I think a lot of CEOs, I don't see it much anymore, but for a long time, CEOs were kind of putting on the dog for the board to make themselves look good. In fact, I remember a situation years ago when one of our CEOs got their resident satisfaction scores and they weren't good.
Uh-oh.
And the CEO just said, I can't show this to my board.
Well, you have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we get to the root of the problem as to why there's so much dissatisfaction? And I just think that we have to be more proactive.
Yeah.
And we can't be window dressing for the board.
Right.
The board is there to really help solve problems.
Agree. Perfect. So let's talk about employee engagement, which I know is another, passion of yours. And you just recently wrote a McKnight Senior Living article, and you said that, recent survey results show that our supervisory level, which is so important, so key to employee retention, are more engaged than they maybe ever have been, or certainly, post-COVID, but they're also more burned out. They're more tired. And so, the care and loving of our supervisors is so important. What recommendations do you have there, or what other takeaways from that research would you like to offer?
Yeah. Well, it might sound counterintuitive that they're engaged and burn out at the same time, but that ambiguity exists. So when people are engaged, obviously they care deeply about the organization and its mission. But burnout can happen simultaneous to that when workloads aren't managed, or the people who supervise the supervisors aren't taking care of the well-being of those supervisors. And so I think that the supervisors are the glue. I think they are the most important function within the whole organization, because they are so tied to turnover and really amazingly influential when it comes to turnover. 57% of our employees, almost 6 out of every 10, leave because of the supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
not because of the organization.
Right.
And that's a huge number. So our managers really need the support so that they can re-engage. And some of that support is around schedules. Some of it is around making sure that there are enough supervisors. I've seen people supervise up to 50 individuals. Now that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can give people individualized attention when they have that many direct reports. Um, and so I think managing that type of thing is important too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think role clarity, making sure that managers understand their locus of control
Mm-hmm.
and their boundaries, and empowering them to make decisions so that they don't have to run back to, the leadership team all the time, that they are trusted, and that they have an individualized experience. Um, and so, if they need flex time, if they need support for mental health,
Mm-hmm.
family situations, and what have you, I think all those things go a long way in terms of engaging our supervisors.
Yeah. What a great message. And I think sometimes, we were talking about the forgotten middle of our consumer, but maybe the supervisors are the forgotten middle of our employment
Great
structure.
analogy.
Yeah, and we just a little attention to their needs, whatever they are. Is it work-life balance? Is it workload? Is it
Right.
things that help them manage their other life outside work? Those things can go a long way, and to your point, will greatly reduce our turnover at the frontline level and
Right.
of those valuable supervisors. So great message. I love that you shared that with us.
Well, I definitely think that our supervisors are showing a lot of loyalty to the organizations. And we're having a hard time, I think, with recruiting EDs. Um, but the middle managers, supervisors, are certainly hanging in there with us, according to what we see.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Good news. So I know as we kind of wrap this up, you do executive coaching. We talked about you forming leadership academies and doing a lot of leadership development. What would you like to tell us today about just leadership development as a whole, or maybe I know you work a lot with really supporting women in leadership roles. What speaks to you to tell us about today?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really passionate about leadership, about executive coaching. So many of our organizations now are doing massive transformations and change management initiatives. And I think what's important is that CEOs feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lonely job.
No kidding.
And so I have created something called the Executive Leadership Journey, which is a female CEO peer coaching experience. And it's been really valuable to help women who are in the C-suite, whether it's CEO or, chief strategy officer or chief human resources or marketing officers. It's important for them to feel like they have what we call a wolf pack
Mm-hmm.
of other females in the field who are able to share information and best practices with them and just make them feel as if they're not in it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been one of the great byproducts of the Larry Minnick's Leadership Academy through Leading Age, which is now in its 17th year, I believe.
Wow.
And that is that people feel supported
Mm-hmm.
because they have these cohorts of, others who are in the field who have gone through the same struggles they've gone through. And I remember asking the first, second, and third class as they left that leadership experience, has this made an impact on your life? And they said, absolutely, it was life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
curriculum is strong, but in addition to the curriculum, it was the network of colleagues that were created through that experience. And that was a byproduct that I don't think we anticipated,
Mm-hmm.
which was very, very helpful to these folks. And, years and years and years later, they're still very close to one another, relying on each other for information and, feeling like they're in it together.
Yeah. And is that the executive leadership journey, is that a rolling application process, or is it?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I try to craft and curate an experience that I believe will really resonate with C-suite leaders. And I do it on an as-needed basis. It's not like it happens, every fall or every spring.
Mm-hmm.
It is, to use your word, kind of organic.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had 2 cohorts go through so far. And they report that it has been a real game changer for them in terms of just knowing how to negotiate through some of the challenges in that C-suite.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had an opportunity to be in something like this when I was in the C-suite. Because, you don't know the challenges that you're going to encounter until you get there. And, speaking of Board Source, I was at a training recently where they talked about something I hadn't heard of before. Maybe you have, but we've all heard of the glass ceiling for women, right? But
Right.
they speak about now a glass cliff where, especially when male-dominated boards, and on some, we already spoke about kind of this, that we have still in senior living a lot of older and tend to be male-dominated boards. They bring in a female senior leader and a CEO or another executive, and the standards that they're held to are sometimes different. And certainly
Oh boy, yes.
they don't get the support. And so that was the reference to the glass cliff, that we have to make sure that we're supporting them in always in those roles. And especially when you have, I found out from this training, a woman of color, that glass cliff becomes even more precarious. So I'm so glad that you're supporting women in leadership in this way. So congratulations and kudos. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, that's nice of you to thank me, but I will tell you, I get every bit as much out of it as they do. Because it is a peer coaching experience, which means that we're all helping each other. I'm just facilitating the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so awesome. All right, Michele, well, we've spoken about so many awesome topics today, and I could go on forever, but I think we should probably bring this podcast to an end. So will you tell our listeners how they can find you? What's the best place to connect with you if they're not already connected?
Well, certainly folks can go onto my LinkedIn page.
Okay.
It's Michele Holleran, and you'll probably find me fairly easily. There's not a whole lot of other Michele Hollerans, so that's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, and we will absolutely link your LinkedIn profile in our show notes and make sure that people can reach you. So,
I so appreciate the opportunity today. It's been fun talking with you.
Yes, I've had a lot of fun, and I know our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of all of your expertise and guidance that you offered. So thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening today. I'm Jennifer Drago, and you've been listening to Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we explore cutting-edge ideas and breakthroughs that are shaping the future of the senior living industry. Please subscribe to be notified each time a new episode drops at seniorlivingvisionaries.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Senior Living Visionaries podcast and radio show, where we showcase the leaders and innovators in the industry who are pushing the boundaries and setting the stage for the future in senior living and services. Join us next time as we share the bold ideas and breakthroughs of the industry's most forward-thinking leaders here on Senior Living Visionaries.